All right. Hi, everyone. I think we're live. Yeah, Russell, looks like we're live. Thank you, everyone, for joining this fire chat with Russell Bobbitt. So, Russell, you've had over 30 years of experience in the film prop design. You are now the head of props at Marvel Studios and creator of duplicate movie props for Marvel MasterWorks. That's impressive just by itself. You are well known for your work on Iron Man, Avengers, Endgame, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, among many other films that you've done both inside and outside the Marvel Universe. So thank you so much for accepting to talk about some of the props you've used 3D printing for. So quick note for the audience, I am going to jump right away into my questions with, to Russell because I have way too many to wait. But just so you know, we are going to have a Q&A session with you guys as well. So if you want to pop your questions into the chat, I will make sure to select a few after I've had the privilege to ask all of my questions to Russell. Be tuned as well because we are going to share some of the pictures of the designs and the props that Russell did design and build over the years. So Russell, again, thank you. And my first question to you is really an easy one. Could you share more what is it that you do? What is a prop? Can you share it a bit more about that?
You bet. Thanks for having me, by the way. Good to be here. Welcome to everybody else. I am a prop master. That's my title. What that means in the film and television industry, commercials, whatever media they hire me for, is I am responsible for anything the actor touches. Anything they physically touch becomes a prop in a film or a TV show or whatever you do. So for instance, in the Marvel world, I'm responsible for Captain America's shield and Thor's hammer and Iron Man's arc reactor, the light that he wears on his chest, amongst other things. Now, there's one area where it's a little touchy, like a doorknob. An actor will touch a doorknob, but I don't get the doorknob. The set department or the art department will get the doorknob until somebody breaks the doorknob, and then I have to get it because I need 20 of them for resets for each take. Then it becomes a prop. So really physically anything the actor touches is a prop, and it's my responsibility to purchase, rent, design, manufacture, and acquire all the props for the film or project that I'm doing.
Awesome, thank you. See, I didn't know half of that, so thank you for that. And so, when was the first time you've used 3D printing for a prop on a set, and why would you do that?
Well, it was way back. J.J. Abrams' first Star Trek. Many times as a prop person, you're very prepared for every scene, and you have everything you need. And Murphy's Law sort of pushes you into the day every day. And the director says, hey, it'd be great if we had this, right? And so this day, J.J. Abrams said, hey, Russell, tomorrow I want a policeman on a floating motorcycle to pull his gun. And so it's 1,000 years in the future. The transportation department had to come up with a floating motorcycle, and the art department, and I had to come up with this gun from the future that didn't exist and we didn't prepare for. And I said, well, JJ, how am I supposed to do that? And he said, go to my office. I have this cool new machine. It's a 3D printer. I got a guy there who can draw the gun for you. Sit with him, design the gun, and see what you can do. So I went and I thought, okay, some magical machine is in somebody's office, and I'm going to go check this out. And I had no idea what I was about to learn. And so I did. I went, and his nice boy, young boy, who had the mind for 3D CAD drawing, named Brandon, random that I would remember that. So we sat and we drew the gun, and he hit the print button. And I see the Z and the Y axis, and then and you know the X
was right there. Yeah.
The X and Y axis start working, right? And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It's a hot glue gun, but it's mechanical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I start seeing the Z axis, and I was like, come on, really? And he said to me, he said, come back at 7 a.m. and you'll have your gun. I was like, what are you talking about? How could that be possible? And so this was my introduction to 3D printing. It was with J.J. Abrams on Star Trek. We had the gun the next day. I had the painters quickly paint it, and we used the gun right off the machine, no molds, no casting, no nothing, in 24 hours after an idea that a genius filmmaker, J.J. Abrams, threw out there. Just, it almost felt like he was testing us, right? Hey, let's have this for tomorrow. And sure enough, he knew, I think, in the back of his head that he'd be sending me to the 3D printer.
But he had this new toy in his office. He was like, hey, want you guys to use that? I love that he was in his office.
That new toy, I think at the time, cost $150,000. So
yeah.
It was quite the toy, but very exciting. I immediately dove in and started researching 3D printing, and told all my illustrator friends who draw with pencils, you better go get yourself a computer.
And when was that?
Oh, I don't even know. I'm bad with dates, but it had to be 15 years ago. The first Star Trek. I'm
sure someone will find it can post it in the chat. Yeah. Good cue for the audience here.
I would have to look at my IMDb account to see when that was. But
as I said, I'm sure someone is going to find that for us.
Yeah.
And so that's a good, this is a great anecdote first. Thank you for that. And makes me curious a little bit about the process, when, director is like, okay, I want this for tomorrow, go get it. And so what is the, and I'm sure like now it's maybe a little bit more standard. I know you have printers in your studio. So, but what is still the general process, from concept to production almost? Because I know we're going to talk a little bit about that as well down the line. But what is the general process? And if you can walk us through some of your preferred props as you do so, and walk us a little bit through the process for those.
Sure. The general process in the entertainment industry, anyway, is that we would read a script, and we live in this sort of crazy imaginary fantasy world, right? 9 times out of 10, I have become the manufacturer person in the industry. And so they'll call me when there's a heavy load of manufacturing, as opposed to a romantic comedy where the bed sheets are important and what you're eating for breakfast. This is what is a Ravager's weapon going to look like in outer space 200 years from now. So I have to dream all that up. So I have a team of people that draw for me. So I'll read the script. I'll make a list of the important props. I'll have my team of illustrators start roughing in some sketches, and I will then pitch it to the director. I'll bring the sketches to the director and say, hey, you need a photon blaster or a plasma, weapon, or whatever it is, a watch from the future. And I'll show him the drawings, he or she. And we will decide, oh, look, I love this one. Let's go to color on it. And we'll do this beautiful concept drawing. And then once we get approved, we take it to the CAD world. We 3D model the props that apply, that apply to 3D printing, or CNC routing, or, there's many tools we use, but we definitely need a good CAD drawing in order to put out a nice prototype, and then make molds and cast and make rubber props for stunts and real ones, and so on and so forth. Then I meet with the actor, and the actor says, well, it's got to be 10% bigger or 10% smaller, or it doesn't look good in my thing, or only large goggles look good on my face, not small ones. So I go through that process, and it kind of increases my list by about 10%. And then I will take it to the manufacture process. Once it's approved, the actor's comfortable with it. On our 3D printers, we will scale things out. So for instance, Stormbreaker, the new Thor hammer, we built that in 34 pieces, kind of assembled like a trophy, if you know how. Yep. Like there's a rod through the middle, and you put one piece and the next and the next. And so that allows us to print the parts on a printer, because we're still awaiting the machine that will print big enough for the Stormbreaker. So we'll scale it. I print a Stormbreaker and I put it in Chris Hemsworth's hands, who we all nicknamed the Specimen because he's just the perfect man. And
Great insight. Okay.
but it's like microns. Like you'll put it in his hand and it'll look a little too big, which makes him look a little too small. Or then we'll print another one smaller and he'll say it's too small. It's kind of like the Three Bears story, right? And this one's a little big, this one's a little small, this one's perfect. We find the perfect scale for every prop, and then we print our final print and then go into production with it. So it's not just that we're making one prototype. We could make 8 or 10 prototypes so that we know exactly what is needed before we spend tons and tons of money on very expensive silicones to make molds and casting, and then it comes out wrong. In the old days, I would have a sculptor sculpting these props, and he would sculpt a bigger one and then a smaller one and so on and so forth.
And that must take quite some time if you were to manually sculpt something. So, I mean, am I right to assume that access to such a technology, even at the prototyping phase, when you're just like, drawing, sketching the first prop, and then you have to basically go sell it internally, and you're using 3D printing for this? Like, I assume this must have changed quite a lot the way you're working, actually, and probably like be one. I mean, I don't want to put everything down to 3D printing, but it must help get the movie done faster, right?
Well, sure. As you pointed out, that you said I have over 30 years in this business. It's more toward 40. And the times have changed 100%. We used to do films where we didn't have a cell phone. I had a pager, and now we have 3D printers. We have technology that can get us to where we need to be more efficiently, sometimes quicker, sometimes not, believe it or not. It depends on the complexity of the design. And so we certainly choose the proper projects and we marry them with the proper tools. What we're finding is that more and more, as we learn about designing and drawing and printing, we are finding that more and more 3D printing is just an everyday event. It's a very useful tool. And so there is no getting around a brilliant idea. And the fact that they took a X and Y axis and added a Z to it, it was a life-changing moment for many, many industries.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And actually, I want to ask you, like, I'm sure it's going to be impossible for you to give me an actual number, but how many props per movie, an average? And would you, on top of your mind, like, how many of them would be 3D printed?
Yeah, well, I would say that I would average about 100 props that we involve 3D printing per film.
Okay.
Right now, I'm working, and I'm sure these questions will be asked, and I won't be able to answer certain questions out there, guys and gals, so beware. But I'm working on 5 Marvel streaming shows right now and a feature film. So when I say 30 per project, I'm printing 200 right now at any given time. So, and it's constant. It's 24/7. The human being needs 8 hours of sleep or so. In our industry, it's more like 6 hours of sleep. But our machines are running 24/7. Okay. That's the beauty. You once you have your drawing and you hit the print button, you go home and sleep tight, and you come back and the machine is still working. It's really it's cheap labor, the 3D printers.
How many machines do you have?
We've got quite a few going right now. Yeah. I think I'm up to about eight machines. But it's kind of if you're a guitar collector, you have a lot of guitars. If you are a toy collector, you go on Thursdays and you wait for the next toy to come out in the toy store. I wait for the next 3D printer, and so I kind of have this disease. I have the 3D printing disease, which is a good disease to have.
I think we have a J.J. Abrams to thank for. for you to have this. And so just back on the number of props, I had a follow-up question for you on how many prints per props do you do? Because and I think you touched base a little bit on that already, based on the different sizes and the scales based on the actors, and every actor having their own kind of request. So yeah, but is there like other things you take in consideration, materials maybe, when you're actually printing a prop?
Sure. We will print 2 to 4 in a hard resin, and then if there's a stunt with that prop, I'll print 6 to 10 in rubber. Okay. So that if a stunt person has to roll or fall or hit somebody, you want to use a softer rubber. So there are some props that I can use straight off the machine, depending on the application. And so, and I certainly keep my mind open to putting props on there that can be used right away, because it saves us a tremendous amount of time and energy in casting and molding and casting materials and labor. And so, as new materials come out, I really embrace new materials. You know, if I have this crazy thing that I do, and my crew thinks I'm absolutely off my rocker, but I call it a Russell test. And when a prop comes to me that has been manufactured, I'll take it, literally, this is not a joke, and I'll throw it up in the air 20 feet and let it hit the ground and see if it breaks. And because I know that as great as somebody tells me a material is, and they say to me, oh, this will never break, if you put it in the hand of an actor or a stunt person, it's going to break. And at $250,000 a day for shooting a project, you can't be the one person that holds up production because that prop broke. Yeah. And so I put it through a rigorous testing process before it makes it in front of the camera. And so I'll know, depending on the script and what has been rehearsed, I'll know what materials to use for a particular prop. And I'll know that this one, I think it'll just be a one-off. We'll make a mold and we'll cast 100 pieces. When I know that it's not that, I can cast and use different materials, the pliable rubbers, and there's tougher resins than others, and I'll know what to use based on that. And I also, use different materials to get the texture that you want, right? So harder materials look better than softer materials, and they paint well. They paint better than the harder material you can paint easier than the softer material. So I take all that into consideration. I know sometimes I'll use a prop that I'm going to age down and make it look like it's 100 years old. Then I can use a softer material, and because we're going to put a lot of rust on something or patina, so it's a multifaceted thought process when you're designing a piece that's going to be 3D printed and finished for use. So you've been using 3D printing really for the props, and so you've learned so much. I mean, I feel like I can have with you really a very technical discussion about 3D printing. You have more printers than I do. I mean, especially now working from home. But anyway, you're definitely a 3D printing person now, that you want it or not. You're part of the family. And so I wanted to ask you, what had been the learning curve? Because I assume it wasn't that easy, and you had to go through a lot of testing and learning. So again, what are some of the lessons learned in designing and printing props, and what had the learning curve been for you? Yeah, so the first thing I do when I get a 3D printer is I name it. I give it a name. And this is why. Every machine has a personality. And there are quirks, whether this one's, you didn't level it right, or you didn't, the human didn't set it up the way you set up the other machine. And it ends up having a personality based on the human set the machine up, and how the human draws the drawing, and how the human figures out where the support's going to be, right? So I learn the personality of every machine, and I dial in the quirks of that machine so that I can work with it in a friendly manner, right? And so out of the box, your very first 3D printer, you want to turn the button on and put a file in there and hit the print button and watch it grow. And we're pretty close to that now. From the time we had our very first 3D printer to now, the softwares have been developed like crazy, and the machines are almost good to go right out of the box. It's really, really, they've made it quite simple, and the sort of auto support, in the software and all that stuff. Genius. People sitting writing code to make all this stuff happen is just mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling to me, and I understand manufacturing and design, and so kudos to the teams of people that it takes to build one single 3D printer. But you do go through a learning process. You do have to figure it out, and I'm going to say that 99% of the time where a machine fails a print, it's human error. It's not the machine, right? So you really have to learn how to draw best, how to place that item on the bed properly so that you're not pooling or vacuuming, or there's lots of, quirky little things that you can find on YouTube all day long that you need to learn to perfect. You don't need to learn all that stuff to print. I think you need to constantly learn that stuff so that you perfect your skill at 3D printing. Oh, did I answer the question? Did I even?
Yeah, you did. No, that's great. Thank you. And as I said, I totally agree. It's I've been through the process myself. Not coming from, I don't have an engineering background. I'm actually more on the sales and biz dev side, but still you need to know some of the technical aspects when you're selling something. And so I've been through the process. And indeed, right now there are a lot of resources available online, but it wasn't always the case. I do remember my own learning curve, so 10 years ago, and it wasn't that simple. And I needed to see the printers, and I needed indeed to know that I was coming into the office and I would see like all the printers we had there, because I was working for a service bureau, and that was important to me, to get to see how they're printing, how they're doing almost. So I totally understand. And since we have, I think, a lot of people from the industry listening to us today, and continuing with this discussion on the learning curve, because again, there is still not perfect today, and we know the learning curve for someone who is starting now is still not, there's still a learning curve. It's not what it was 10 years ago, but it's still there. What would be your, I would say, like, what's on your wish list almost when it comes to 3D printing? Like, anyone who's listening to us today and who's working on making the machines better, the software, the materials, like what do you want from them?
I look forward to the bigger printer. I look forward to, I don't know, it's hard. It's very hard. So I imagine the future, right? I said that earlier.
Yeah.
And so if I was to imagine the future of 3D printing, I look forward to a consumer machine that prints metal. I look forward to, and I know there are metal printing machines now, but the consumer version of it, right? We can all go out and buy a 3D printer now, and I'd love to be able to start really embracing metal. I look for the bigger platform, right? We always want to go bigger, because the day I can print a metal Stormbreaker in one run, I'm in good shape, right?
Yeah.
And any industry, right? The airplane industry, the automotive industry, all of our industries, I think, bigger and more efficient, and not more efficient, large size, efficient, and speed, quick, right? And I look forward to new materials. You know, I really do. I'd love to see and I say I'm a consumer, right? Because I'm not out buying $400,000 printers. I'm more in the, you know, the smaller range for what I need. Um, but that's sort of, you know, there's not a lot to look forward to. I'm already in awe of what we have now, because like I said, you know, some of our viewers don't even know what a pager is, but I used to make movies with a pager, and now I'm making movies with a 3D printer. So I'm pretty excited as it is, and I'm pretty satisfied with where the 3D printing world is. You know, I go to CES a lot, the Consumer Electronics Show. I do panels at Comic-Con. I do all that stuff, right? And I learn a lot about people. I learn a lot about machinery. I saw a 3D printer that printed food, sugar-based. Loved that when I saw that. I think the FDA got involved a little bit, so I didn't have one when I wanted one. I always want it straight off out of CES. They don't give it to me, but those kind of things are really exciting. You know, additives are very versatile, and these machines have, as simple as they are, you buy a 3D printer and you expect to see this crazy mechanical thing. Well, it's not. It's really three accesses that are feeding additive to build what you need in many different arenas, right? You know, you've got your PLAs and your SLAs and all the different ways of curing and feeding in your additives. And it's just fascinating. And so those are the things I look forward to: bigger, faster, more efficient in the world of materials, metals, ceramics. They're out there, but I'm excited to see the consumer get their hands on all that stuff.
And I like that you are classifying yourself as a consumer versus business, because you're actually using it for your business. I kind of see the relationship you have with your printers. You need to have them in your hands, right? I mean, this is how you work. You would not use a service, I imagine, unless it's really a rare material that you cannot put your hands on. But otherwise, I have this impression that you really need to have them in-house. That's important for you.
It is important to me, not only because it's a useful tool, but I'm a nerd. I'm a geek for that kind of stuff. You know, I grew up a long time ago in the 60s. I started, and I was just sort of this, you know, like little rocker hippie guy, right? But I've grown to become the person that the bullies used to make fun of, and our world has changed, and those people that used to get made fun of are running our world right now, and I salute everyone out there for that. I want to be you now, and years ago you wanted to be me, and I'm glad to see that turn in our world, and that we are proud to say we're nerds. You know, I think that's just it warms my heart. It really does. And so, am I a consumer? Yeah, I'm not in the business of 3D printing, but it's a tool that I use amongst many tools to get my job done. So yes, I am using it professionally, but I also use it at home. You know, I have found myself 3D printing washers because I don't want to get in the car and go to Home Depot. I can just hit the print file and I have my washer in 40 minutes. While I'm having lunch, I get my washer because I didn't have the right size washer. Literally have done that many times. And
you are a real maker.
And you know, when this COVID started, when the pandemic started, they sort of shut the film industry down, and I couldn't stop because I'm an inventor and I do things. I invented a UVC light box that disinfects anything that goes in there in 30 seconds. This is so that I could help the film industry get back up and running in a safe manner. And so before I hand an actor a prop, I put it in my UVC light box. I call it blast box. And I disinfect the ring, the watch, the eyeglasses that they wear. And they come to the box, the actors. I almost said which actors I'm working with right now, and that wouldn't be good.
And I wasn't saying anything, being like he's going to say a name.
Some of the actors, they come to the box and they take it out themselves, and it's peace of mind. Well, the reason I'm telling this story is I made the box. It was great. I have a switch where if you open the box, it turns off because UVC light's not good for your skin. And the doors were loose, and the switch wasn't working. And I looked down and I thought, well, it needs a wedge. I drew and 3D printed a wedge that completed the box. The box would not work unless I 3D printed the last part, and it comes right off the machine and goes into the box. And now the doors close tight. So every day of my life, whether it's film industry or any other industry, or just my entrepreneurial silliness that I live in, the printer's there for me. So,
and actually, as you say, the printer is there for you. I know you're also here for the printer because you've used 3D printers as props on sets multiple times, and I think one of them was the Avengers. And it has an impact on how people are actually perceiving 3D printing. So first, I want to thank you for that, because I always make something when I'm actually seeing a 3D printer in a movie, and I'm not expecting it. And really, I think it has really a huge impact. And so I wanted to ask you, what was the reasoning behind it when you decide purposefully to take a 3D printer and put it on the set?
So, right. So now this is another one of those moments where the director comes to me and says, Tony Stark's workshop needs to be the best. It needs to be the most updated, top of the line equipment, because this is a billionaire engineer manufacturer who we need to really portray that and show that they're choosing the right equipment. And we sort of help create the character by doing so. So robotics and laser, plasma, 3D printing. So when I hear that, when it's supposed to be technology that is supposed to be top of the line and current, to me, there are quite a handful of machines, a handful of genres that you would choose. 3D printing needs to be present in that genre because it is the hottest, latest technology that's out there in its class, right? Mm. If you're making a car fender, there might be a beautiful robot out there that's top of its class for that process. But in the world of what Tony Stark might invent or come up with, no-brainer that he should have a 3D printer in the workshop. That is how and why the Formlabs made it in the Avengers movies. It also made it into Ant-Man. So Ant-Man was kind of interesting for Michael Douglas's workshop. It's Pym, the character of Pym. His workshop, the director came to me and said, I'd be interested in doing a little old school and a little new school, right? And so we put a lot of antique tools in there, yeah, and blueprints and things like that, along with the iconic orange Formlabs machine in there. And what happened was all the old stuff sort of blended into the set, and the Formlabs to me popped like crazy, yeah, like it was the first thing and the only thing you see in that set, because your eye is attracted to the orange and they put light behind it, and it really became a kind of really cool piece that said, I'm in Pym's workshop now.
And I think there's some pictures on the open chat.
Yeah, good. And so really, that's what we do. If I feel that it's organic, I want the right machinery there, and so I will reach out to companies like yours, eyeglasses as well. If there's Marvel fans out there, and I'm sure there are, the glasses, the Edith glasses that were in the Avengers, that then went into Spider-Man, and he leaves him the Edith glasses, Tom Holland, and those glasses have become an iconic prop through those films. And it was just organic. Robert Downey Jr. and I, when we do every movie, we sit down and we talk about eyeglasses. And so he tells me what color tie he's going to wear and how many different costumes he's going to wear. So I take the tie color and I make the same lens color for the eyeglasses, and we put our eyeglasses together. And so those Edith glasses weren't going to be a big deal, but as the writers saw the opportunity, they made it a big deal. Same with 3D printing, with the printers that we put in the films, whatever it is that, you know, comes into play. Little anecdotes like that happen every day in my life. And when I retire, I will write a book, and there'll be a chapter for every film I work on, because there's stories like crazy that I can't tell yet.
Well, I'm looking forward to that book, not for you to retire, but for the book, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go, because I want to be mindful of the time as well. So I'm looking at a bit of our Q&A tab, and we have quite a few questions related to post-processing. And so let me read this first one from John. So could you talk a bit about post-processing your prints? So do you do any weathering, aging, or sculpting work after printing? I think we've already touched base a little bit on that, but if you want to add a little bit more to that, and have you found any specific primers, paints that work better than others?
Yes, we of course do a lot of finish work on most of the props, unless it's coming straight off the printer as a prop, and then we wouldn't do anything to it. But we do have a lot of props. As you know, what's coming off are rubbers and, you know, urethanes and resins and things like that. So it's the typical stuff that you would use on any resin. But I do use a paint called ALSA, ALSA. Go to alsacorp.com if you have deep pockets. We use a mirachrome to make metal. So, for instance, the rubber Thor hammers, we use this ALSA paint on there. It's $1,000 a gallon, and I'll take a pause there, because people always say, "What?" But it is, and that's how we get our real, true metallics. There's another good metallic product out there called Luminor, and it's got metal pigments in there, and so we use a lot when we want the metals. We use very expensive paint finishes, and we have incredibly talented painters that what I'll do, my process for saying how much something should be aged down, is I'll go in there and give them some backstory on a prop. Okay, this prop is rusty and it's about 40 years old and it's been sitting in the garage in the South where it's humid.
And they find you the perfect tone.
And our painters will dial into that in their mind and add patina and add some sprays of, you know, rust and so on and so forth. So yes, we do that with everything, whether it should be brand new or aged down tremendously. It's a long process of finishing after we've printed and cleaned up our prints.
Yeah, I can imagine. Thank you for that. And actually, great question from Benjamin. My mind was right there as well. What is the most labor-intensive prop for a Marvel movie that you've ever worked on?
I would have to say that it would be the arc reactors. So I get a phone call. This is a true story. I get a phone call from Robert Downey Jr. when we start a movie that he is in. And he says to me, "Come on over, come to the house. I'll meet you in the shop, in the workshop." He's got his garage set up as a little acting workshop. And
don't tell me he has an actual he has an actual workshop in his garage. That's awesome.
He does his fittings there, and he's got racks of eyeglasses. He you know,
those anecdotes, yeah.
Work out a little bit. So I go over and we talk about the arc reactor, which has changed for every movie. Yeah. And he looks at me and he says, "Triangles." And I say, "Okay, triangles." So we draw triangles, 1,000 triangles. Look at, I think maybe it was from Iron Man 2. It's all triangles. You'll count a lot of triangles. Another movie, I went to the garage and he said, hexagons. Okay, hexagons it is. And so we take all our designs, and he and I will design it together. I'll 3D print scale models, and we put them on his chest. So I have a scan of his chest because he has a beautiful deep chest cavity. And so I will have to, I match that because I literally glue the piece right on him because it's supposed to appear to go inside his body. So every day I glue with special effects makeup glue on there. It's probably the most intricate prop that we make because it's forced perspective. It looks deep. When you look at the arc reactor, it looks like it's going into his chest. And that's a challenge. You start with something big and you go smaller, smaller, smaller.
Yeah.
And that gives you that forced perspective. And we based the arc reactors off of cold fusion, nuclear power. And we made an electromagnet to keep the shrapnel away from his heart. So I don't just make the prop, but I make up the story. And so my answer always is that arc reactor, and all of the arc reactors that we made is the most difficult and closest to my heart.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
And again, I think we have time for maybe one more question. Let me select. And I'm sorry for everyone who is asking so many great questions. It's going to be hard for me to pick just one. Actually, I want to ask one from Alex. How do you find your designers and modeler today?
Well, that's a two-part answer. One is, if you're in the industry that I'm in for as long as I've been in it, you have lots of friends who have come up with you and understand and have embraced 3D modeling. So it's a two-part. One, I have 2D artists that work who are very successful in getting a director to say, I love the prop. And then, so in that case, I have to then take the 2D drawing, give it to a 3D CAD modeler, who then turns it into something usable for our machinery. A lot of the 2D guys have become 3D guys. And so what happens is I'll use all those people, and then we run out of people. So my favorite, and there are many, many great softwares out there, and I want to tip my hat to all the softwares out there because they're great. But we find right now in our space that we live in is that SolidWorks is great for engineering manufactured parts. ZBrush we're leaning towards ZBrush for organics. So I find people to draw for me that have learned ZBrush their whole life or learned SolidWorks. All the other softwares are great too. I have many illustrators that use Modo and many different softwares, and they all work well. But we're leaning toward those areas right now. This week, next week it could be different. But when we run out of people that I know and that I've grown up with, knock on my door. If you draw well and draw fast, you'll get work. I feel like the question behind the question is how do I get into the film business? I get that a lot. If you have passion for this film business and you're an artist and you can draw a 3D CAD drawing like nobody's business, knock on doors, find people like me, get out there and figure it out, depending on where you live, where the film industry is at the time, because we're kind of all gypsy filmmakers. We go from California to Atlanta to Louisiana to South Carolina. It jumps around. If you have the talent and you have the passion, imdb.com is a great place to find out what's going on and who works on things. You can look at the art department coordinators. You can look at production designers, art directors. You can get out there and figure that out if you want to make a career of this. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. And I think Diana also posted your Instagram account on the chat. If anyone wants to follow you, I think you'll have a new follower with me later today for sure. Well, thank you so much. I'm feeling really lucky that I had a chance to ask you all of those questions. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for your work. Thank you for having us dreaming through your movies and continuing placing 3D printers on sets. Looking forward to hearing about the next movies you're working on. And can be sure to, as soon as I can, go out there in a movie and enjoy it. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, audience, for the great questions. I apologize I wasn't able to ask all of them. We had really, really good questions out there. But thank you, everyone, for your engagement. And have a great rest of the day and the summit. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.